What's up, lunatics? I'm Matt Sunday. I'm here with Chris Bradford, our beautiful Penguins reporter. You guys can't tell that he's beautiful at this moment, but you saw him all season, so
beautiful might be a stretch.
Beautiful's a stretch?
Handsome. My grandmother always said handsome, so.
Handsome. I'll stick with handsome then.
That's an old word.
We're here in the box bringing you the Penguins podcast. Last week we talked about the Penguins forwards and how we graded them out on the season. So we're going to talk about the defense now, and everybody wants to hear your thoughts on Chris Letang, Chris, so go ahead.
Deep dive on Chris Letang. Okay, here it is. Long story short, he didn't have much of an off-season last year. He was coming off the neck surgery. Wasn't able to prepare like he usually does. I mean, this is a guy is a little bit like the James Harrison of hockey. I mean, this is a guy who records himself on social media doing workouts. Last summer he was with Terrell Owens for whatever reason, working out. But this is a guy who's in incredible shape. He's not the biggest guy, but he's been able to survive in this league for 12 years by being a physical player as well as being, one of the better offensive-minded defensemen out there. I think that really hindered him. I know a lot of the mistakes were decision-making and not really physical in nature, but I think they tend to kind of lend one into the other, where I think that part of his game wasn't there, and that sort of led to some of the other stuff.
Yeah, I think that he was timid all year going into physical altercations. I think early in the season, anytime he started to mix things up with anyone, we saw teammates jumping in. I think that even could mess with you a little bit. Like, whoa, they think I'm this, they think I'm tender. They have to protect me out here. I've always thought that Chris Letang plays larger than his size. He's able to, he's a really physical player. He and Sidney Crosby are arguably the most physical players on the Penguins.
Yeah, you can make a case for that. And they're two of the under 6 foot. I think I just saw somewhere that they listed Letang at 6 foot even now. I seem to remember where he was 5'10" or 5'11". I'll go with 5'11", but I always remember the famous line by Ray Shero. He's a prick to play against. I guess you can say prick on.
Yeah, sure,
okay.
Why not?
Yeah, but he's a very tough player to play against. Not a lot of fun for a guy his size. And then throw in the fact that he's actually really good. He's probably, I know some people don't like to hear this, but I still say he's the best defenseman in Penguins history. At least he's a true Penguin. I mean, this isn't Larry Murphy, a guy at the end of his career. This is Chris Letang. This is the best defenseman in franchise history.
No, he's still going to be a fantastic player, and he's still going to be a Pittsburgh Penguin. I would find it very hard to believe that anybody out there speculating that he wouldn't be a Penguin.
No, and the other side of that is the $7 million that he's owed next year. I don't think anybody's going to bite on that contract at this point. Letang is, 31 years old, and maybe he is slowing down a little bit, but I think he's clearly better than what he showed last year, or this year, however you want to put it. I suspect he will be back motivated more than anyone to have a pretty good 2018-19 season, and I would be stunned if he isn't much better in all areas.
Yeah, head injuries, neck injuries, spine injuries, back injuries, any type of injury that messes with the way that you use your head.
Yep.
Just completely changes the way I absolutely would. It's like I've mentioned before where they're not injuries that you ever really heal from. You can go in, you can get the scan, and you can have your baseline, and on the concussion side of things, you can be checked up and be ready to go, but you're just never the same. And I imagine that this neck injury that he dealt with and is still dealing with in that regard is much the same way. And he's a guy that even before that, and we haven't even brought up the heart, the heart attack,
Yeah. Stroke.
The stroke, yeah. So it's he's a difficult guy to kind of get in his head and judge what he's thinking, but there's a lot of thought process going on in there, and really he wasn't all that bad last year. So
numbers were good. I mean, they're not great by his standards, but they were pretty, I would say, par for the course, what you would expect for him from at this point in his career. I don't have any problem with that, and again, with the full offseason to work out and get everything back the way it should be, I suspect he'll have a pretty good season next year.
Yeah, and the Penguins, the way that they rely on puck-moving defensemen, the drop-off, the fall-off from Chris Letang to everybody else on that Penguins roster is, it was significant this year, was it not?
Yeah. I like Justin Schultz's skill set, but Letang is a high end.
But just talk about point production.
Yeah.
I mean, Justin Schultz does a lot of great things for the Penguins, and we've spoken before where I like him better on the first power play unit for a number of reasons. But Chris Letang, he still finds ways to score big goals. He still finds ways to set guys up. So
had a goal in Game 6 in that Capitals loss.
Sure did.
The only goal they had.
Yeah, I don't believe for a second that Chris Letang's going anywhere. How when you move on from him, what's the rest of your grades here for? Well, we'll get to grading them as a whole, but what do you like the rest of the defensemen?
You know what? We mentioned Schultz. The other guy I really liked is Letang's partner, Brian Dumoulin. I thought he had his best year, in his fledgling career, just 3 years. I thought he really is starting to become a solid number 2 guy that, I think is going to be recognized around the league. He came from Boston College, was a second-round pick, was very high in the Carolina system when he got dealt to the Penguins. Yeah, I think that guy really has a bright future. He's only 26, so he's one of the guys, one of the few Penguins I would say that's really just starting to get into the prime of his career.
Yeah, the thing about watching Brian Dumoulin this season is he finally started to come into that element of his game that he was known for in his youth, which was his ability to move the puck and score and skate and pass. And, he could develop into more of a puck moving presence and
I think so.
Rush the puck a little bit more. We saw all through the playoffs. I mean, he was easily among the best Penguins through the playoffs.
And I was going to say, obviously we saw the Penguins kind of get burnt sometimes by pinching in a little bit too much, maybe a little over-aggressive in that area. But, and one of those goals that led to I think it was a breakaway where Dumoulin drove to the net with the puck. I think he did that Toronto move that was non-goal from back in March. But it's just to have the confidence to do that type of stuff. That's something a little bit different for him.
Yeah, when you're talking about the Penguins losing a game that was on the stick of Brian Dumoulin as a potential win seconds earlier, that's an entirely different Brian Dumoulin from a season ago or even 2 years ago, regardless of the success that he's had with the Penguins so far.
And the other guy I think we got to mention is Olli Maatta. I mean, this is a guy who, he's gone through a lot himself. We mentioned Chris Letang, but sure. Maatta certainly had his own health and injury issues over the last few years, and he finally has the season that was pretty much comparable point production-wise to his rookie year when he was, a legitimate Calder type guy, and he may have been the Penguins' most consistent defenseman, I would say, on both ends of the ice.
Yeah, early in the season through the halfway point, he looked like the Penguins' best defenseman, and after that, I wouldn't say that he looked bad. He just looked more average than he did that first.
And obviously, no one's going to let down that goal with the minute 7 left, and I believe that was Game 3 that led to the Ovechkin game winner. He just turned the puck over in the middle of the ice to just a really bad turnover. But obviously, you don't want that to outweigh what he did over the course of the season. But I think those 3 guys, obviously there's more of them, but those 3 guys really stood out to me. And actually, I got to throw a 4th guy in there. It's Jamie Alexiak, because that was a guy comes in mid-December from a trade. Nobody knows much about him. He played like 40 games for Dallas the year before, and then he comes here and he's, he did the job that he was supposed to do and more.
Yeah, he's a classic Justin Schultz or Trevor Daley acquisition for the GM here, and it's. The really neat thing about Jamie Alexiak is just watching the guy skate, because it is truly beautiful. He's a fluid skater. He reminds me of a lacrosse player, the way that he protects the puck with his long reach, keeps an arm out to kind of shield himself, similar to Sidney Crosby, just as a much larger guy. Yeah,
you almost forget that he's 6'7", 255. He's that good a skater, that kind of player. I think there's some areas where he needs to improve upon. During his locker cleanout, he mentioned consistency, and I think that's the one thing I'd look for him to do. But he certainly brings size. He has a little bit of snarl. I'd like to see the Penguins maybe get a little more of that on the back end of their defense.
Yeah, no, you and I both like a little bit of snarl. Yeah. I mean, the guy, when he's able to mix a little bit of toughness. Now, the one criticism that I definitely have of the guy is that he's got that kind of Brian Dumoulin-esque hitting attribute where it's not really a hitting attribute. He likes to take a couple of steps and then glide 6 feet and kind of like bump a guy. Every once in a while, they'll rub somebody off along the boards behind the net, and it looks really pretty. But
That's just 255 pounds.
Yeah, I mean the Penguins don't really have anybody that really knows how to hit anybody, especially in the open ice. But no, just watching him skate, man, just the flow of his game, the way that he weaves in and out of guys and protects the puck. I mean, he's a much better skater than you would have ever expected for his size or really what we knew about him.
Yeah, Sullivan always says of Alexiak that he doesn't realize how strong he is, and I think, he's off the ice. He's not. He's not the real intimidating guy. He's really pretty soft-spoken guy. But if he develops more of a mean streak, he's one of those guys who kind of likes to push back more than push first. He'll stand up for his teammates. Good guy to have like that, but maybe if he had a little more aggression into his game.
Yeah, no, obviously, I'd like to see those guys being on their front foot and really like driving into some hits and being able to attack guys in corners, because watching, especially, and let's bring Dumoulin back into that again, because these guys both do this, and watching them just lead with the stick and kind of just coast into contact in corners and try and contain more than be aggressive. Some of that it might be a defensive scheme type of thing, but you have to get to loose pucks, and that's something that the Penguins didn't do in the playoffs. They were missing out on most of the 50-50 opportunities. And Alexiak and Dumoulin, as good as they are at certain aspects of their game, they really could stand to be more aggressive and use some of their size. I mean, Dumoulin's a thick guy.
He's a big dude. He's 6'4", 6'5", something like that.
Both of these guys, I'm not saying that you have to go out there and just constantly be moving forward to hit guys like a Tom Wilson type and, the legal side of his game. But they need to be more aggressive, and they need to use their body in a way that just helps the Penguins, not necessarily hurts them.
Chad Ruhwedel, got anything to say about Chad?
What I'm going to say is that when the Penguins finished their second Stanley Cup run, and Chad Ruhwedel was that 6'7" guy, that was a better situation than Hunwick and Ruhwedel fighting over the 6th spot.
Fair enough.
So that's what I've got to say about Ruhwedel. But I mean, I do think that he's a capable player. He can do some good things, but having him as that, playing 6-7 minutes.
And you mentioned Matt Hunwick. That's another interesting case because he's signed for 2 more years. I don't know if Jim Rutherford regrets that one, but I don't know if too many teams are going to bite on that, on taking on Matt Hunwick at this point. He's 32 years old, I believe. Certainly did not have the season he wanted or the Penguins envisioned for him. So he'll be back, but, it's hard to see where exactly he's going to fit in.
Now, Jim Rutherford was asked about Matt Hunwick at the locker cleanout day. Were you at all surprised that he kind of stood by that acquisition and didn't? I mean, I know the guy's got another year to play in Pittsburgh, and you have to expect that they're not going to easily be able to move him if they were able to move him. But he seemed so confident in Hunwick's ability to play, and like he was just like Hunwick just never mentally was able to commit himself to the Penguins.
Yeah, that's what he mentioned, that the pressure got to him a little bit, and you don't expect to hear that from a guy who's a veteran player. And I didn't expect Jim Rutherford to be like, yeah, I messed this one up, but but
there's a middle ground there too.
Yeah. I mean,
because Hunwick had an entire season to get over the pressure. When you've sat a number of games, how much pressure is there? At some point you just gotta. I mean, he had his chance, he lost it, and then he gets another chance, and then he loses it.
Yeah, and I hate to bring up the concussion thing again, but there was another guy. He had a concussion earlier in the season, missed. I think it was 10, 15 games in October, November, and then he was never right after that. And, you hope that wasn't the issue, but it certainly could have been, because he wasn't the same player that the Penguins at least thought they were getting.
No, and he did have an overtime goal before then.
Against the Islanders, yeah.
And he looked like he was capable of skating in those open ice minutes. It's like Matt Hunwick's out here on a 3-on-3 situation. The Penguins are giving him some opportunities. You can always point to, a concussion or any type of injury as a turning point in a season, but wouldn't you have thought that Jim Rutherford would have used that as the excuse, not that he was just overwhelmed and pressured by the situation to play for the Penguins?
Certainly an odd one. I probably would have gone with what you were saying, that putting pressure makes it almost look worse than an actual injury.
Yeah, it was just odd to hear the GM kind of use that as the excuse. But the way that he talked about him, it made it sound like he's willing to give him a chance to play next year. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to be back, and we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe he does overtake Chad Ruedel at some point. There was certainly speculation that could happen during the playoffs. Didn't happen, but certainly was rumored among some of the last-ditch efforts that the Penguins could have made against the Capitals.
Yeah, I mean, if he is back and he returns to a form like he had, 2 seasons ago
with Toronto,
yeah. That would be great for the Penguins because that moves Chad Ruedel back into that 6-7 minutes kind of situation. And if Hunwick is able to play like that and be more of a puck mover and a skater for the Penguins, well, hey, that fills a need that they have there as well.
I don't even see, looking at the 6-7 guys we mentioned, how they're going to have to probably lose somebody to have to bring somebody in to get that snarl or whatever it is that they want on the defense core.
Well, they probably need to add that a little bit as a team anyway, don't you think?
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, obviously when you lose guys like Cole and Reeves, that they sort of handled that department. We mentioned Alexiak, that doesn't not necessarily come natural to him, but he does do it. But yeah,
we get tossed around a little bit for the Ian Cole love at times, but the guy was aggressive and he hit guys. He did things legally. He was able to connect on open ice hits every once in a while and send a little bit of a message that way, which is obviously better than losing out on 5 minutes of ice time.
Hey, he's a free agent.
Hey, he's a free agent. He's a free agent. The listeners know that if Ian Cole's in Pittsburgh, there's always a chance of a morning Java with Ian Cole after a June hockey game.
Yeah, that would be cool. Ready to give a grade on the defense?
Whew. I'm going with a C on the defensive side.
Yeah, see, I definitely grade higher than you, but I'm just going C+. I'm not going that much different than you. I think, it was certainly because of Letang's struggles, basically, because if he's healthy, I think that certainly changes everything. He plays so many minutes, so he's the biggest part of that defense core. So if he had a better season, it'd probably be a little bit higher grade, but for me, it's a C+, and I think that might be a little generous.
I just think that the inconsistencies, both Mata and Dumoulin had really long stretches of playing really well, and Chris Letang had stretches of playing really well as well. And the trying to figure out who belonged on the first line of the power play, and juggling that around a little bit. But it all comes back to like what I said last week with the forwards. This team was way too narrow in that goal differential category, and they were way too close to missing out on the playoffs entirely before they kicked it into gear for a couple of weeks. So I just I don't know if it's that old school Matt Sunday went to Peters Township and they didn't give B pluses and C pluses, they gave B's and C's. But yeah, man, I think
I gotta get away from the pluses and minuses. So I'll go C plus.
I don't know, man. You're probably gonna have more favorable responses over these last 2 weeks than I have. I'm down a half grade from you.
Oh, you just haven't seen my cups lately. I've been getting some down cups.
Well, you're from Philadelphia, therefore.
Oh, that's right.
Therefore, you are a Flyers fan.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I was a Capitals fan. I was a Capitals fan.
Let it be known that Matt Sunday is the only member of the DKPS staff who wears any type of Philly anything, and it is my Philadelphia Union soccer jersey that I wear every once in a while for my buddy Ray Gaddis out there. So I'd like to stand out for my buddy. Chris Bradford here. He is
get the arrows out of my back.
A Philadelphia Flyers fan, but it was good that you showed me around your hometown out there. We never got to talk about that.
We did. We went to the Italian market, man. That was pretty cool, I thought. You liked it.
People in Pittsburgh, if you guys like the Strip District, next time you're in Philly, you got to check out this Italian market. There is more meat hanging in windows out there than I have ever dreamt of in my entire life. And that'll get us back to our food podcast in the future. For now, this has been In the Box. For Chris Bradford, I am Matt Sunday. Thanks for listening, lunatics.